The occult and the Vatican. There's some very strange things going on at the Vatican within their architecture, within some of the things that they put out, some of their displays and the way the Vatican City is constructed definitely ties to the occult, as well as the testimony of Malachi Martin, who worked high up within the Vatican and has some insider knowledge about Satanism at the highest levels of the Vatican. So I'm going to get into all of that in this video. Quickly, I'll say this video isn't to hate on Catholics. I know Catholics who I believe are saved because they believe in Jesus Christ, what he did on the cross in the Bible. So this video isn't really to talk about the Catholic Church as a whole. This will really be about the highest levels and a secret group within these levels that has to be controlling these things to be producing these very strange occult symbolisms and occult ties within their architecture and the things they do. So let's get into some of that right now. First, I'll share a little information about what Malachi Martin said. He worked within the Catholic Church at a very high level. He had insider knowledge. He was a Jesuit, which is what the current Pope is, which is a secret society of Jesus Christ, which he eventually disavowed from after learning all this information. He stayed a member of the Catholic Church, but he disavowed from being a Jesuit. And listen, he's got some very interesting things to say about the Catholic Church and some of the Satanism that was going on within it. Former Vatican insider Malachi Martin asserted that a satanic enthronement ceremony took place in the Vatican in 1963. The result of this ritual meant that the Vatican manifested what clerics refer to as the super force. Martin had first made reference to a diabolical rite held in Rome in his 1990 nonfiction bestseller about geopolitics in the Vatican, The Keys of This Blood, page 632, where he wrote, "Most frighteningly for Pope John Paul II, he had come up against the irremovable presence of a malign strength in his own Vatican and in certain bishops' chancelleries. It is what knowledgeable churchmen called the super force. Rumors, always difficult to verify, tied its installation to the beginning of Pope Paul VI's reign in 1963. Indeed, Paul had alluded somberly to the smoke of Satan which had entered the sanctuary, an oblique reference to an enthronement ceremony by Satanists in the Vatican. Besides the incidents of satanic pedophilia, rites and practices was already documented among certain bishops and priests as widely dispersed as Turin in Italy and South Carolina in the United States. The cleric acts of satanic pedophilia are considered by professionals to be the culmination of the fallen archangel's rite." In one of Malachi Martin's last works, Windswept House, a Vatican novel, which he said was 85% based in reality, in this story he describes a ceremony called the enthronement of the fallen archangel Lucifer, held in St. Paul's Chapel in the Vatican, and linked with concurrent satanic rites here in the United States on June 29, 1963, barely a week after the election of John Paul VI. Malachi Martin said more members of the clergy are becoming aware of the situation. An archbishop also accused high members of the hierarchy in Rome of practicing Satanism. The Italian newspaper The Second Tempo and other major daily papers reported this stunning news. Now, strangely enough, I actually have this video also pulled up in May 27th, 2014, which I won't play the audio because he's speaking in Latin, I believe, but the current pope, also prophesied to be the last pope by Saint Malachi, who received a vision of 112 popes after the current pope that was living at the time, which would leave the current pope being the last pope, the Black Pope, and he actually fits the qualifiers of being the Black Pope because he was a Jesuit who dresses in black, and his name is tied to Peter, which was the name of this prophesied last pope by Saint Malachi. But in this video, Pope Francis, he likens child sex abuse by priests to a satanic mass. In a plain interview, this was in 2014. So kind of just confirming what Malachi Martin really was saying about the Black Mass and just the satanic pedophilia and the ties of what that is. Now, Pope Paul VI, who was referenced at being the Pope during the satanic enthronement that Malachi Martin mentioned, the quote that he mentioned within that was this, and he said this on June 29th, 1972, "We would say that through some mysterious crack, no, it's not mysterious, through some crack, the smoke of Satan has entered the Church of God. There is doubt, uncertainty, problems, unrest, dissatisfaction, confrontation." And so maybe he's referencing that he was aware of this satanic infiltration. Of course, I guess he just couldn't come out and say it openly because who knows, maybe he feared his life or something, but there's that quote which is pretty interesting. So with those references to Satanism being within the highest levels of the Catholic Church, we can now look at some of the symbolism that goes on within the Vatican. First, we'll look at Vatican City, which here we can see right here is the obelisk, which is the penis of Osiris, the Egyptian god. That's what obelisks are. Then over here, we see the dome, which is actually the pregnant belly of Isis, another Egyptian god. And this whole lining up thing is where Egyptian satanic rituals are done to try to bring in Apollo. And as we know in the Bible, it says in Revelation 9:11, and they had as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in the Greek has the name Apollyon. Now, this architecture of Vatican City may just seem like, oh, well, okay, maybe they got some weird obelisk, and plenty of places have domes. Maybe that's not too weird. But when we look around the world, this is something we see somewhere else. We can look here in America, in our own backyard or in our own home country for many of us. We have the obelisk, the Washington Monument, and as you can see in the background, there's the Capitol building, the pregnant belly of Osiris, right? So we see this here even in America. And what can we also do? We can look in London with the same exact architectural layout. It's no coincidence that these different architectures around the world have this. And what do we have at the Vatican? That's the religion. What's America? That's military. What's London? That's finances. So we have these same ritual layouts at these same different places within the entire world. That's 100% not a coincidence. I'll cover this next because it also has ties to Egypt within the Vatican, but this was the occult symbolism at the Vatican's 2020 Nativity Scene that we might all remember. Very strange nativity scene that they put where, I mean, look at this. Does this look like this brings glory to Jesus Christ? No, this is very odd. This looks satanic and it looks like very occultish, and that's exactly what it is. And off to the side of it, there is an astronaut. Very strange, right? You'd think, but the Vatican also says that they would baptize aliens if they came, which are fallen entities. I mean, completely provable in my opinion. The Vatican also has the Lucifer telescope that they run, which that's the name of the telescope. So when there is a strange astronaut here at the nativity scene, as well as an executioner wearing a horned helmet, I mean, this is just not anything that should be seen at a nativity scene. Jesus is supposed to be the centerpiece and the focal point of it, but he's just some blonde-haired doll off to the side no one even pays attention to. So very strange nativity scene. The tie that it has to Egypt would be the centerpiece of the entire nativity scene, which is not Jesus, but rather the angel Gabriel. And he is surrounded by a massive aura while Jesus is just standing there looking just like a cork or something. Furthermore, the angel towers over everything atop a ribbed pillar. The overall shape of this pillar is highly reminiscent of an important symbol in ancient Egypt, the Djed pillar. Here we can see the Djed pillar depicting the goddess Hathor. This is very strange, and again, back to the astronaut thing, he appears to be holding something, creating something, giving something. It looks like a face or a head almost. On the astronaut's helmet, there's an 8-pointed star, and who knows, I believe that there is a possibility that if these aliens come down and make contact, that they will say, we created Jesus, we created all the gods. Here's video of us creating Jesus. Here's video footage of Jesus going to the cross. Yeah, that happened, but here we created him. And then here's a picture of the alien holding something. I mean, I don't know. It's something strange like that could very well happen. Because we know in the end times there will be a great falling away. So what's going to get people to not believe in Jesus Christ, who haven't truly experienced him in their daily lives, must not read the Bible, but something like a complete deception like these fallen entities coming with knowledge of how they created the earth and everything in it. Now, more strange symbolism at the Vatican is the pine cone that they have around the Vatican in many different areas. Here's just a few pictures of it, but we can see here also that the Assyrian god is holding this. The Assyrian false god is holding the same pine cone shape, and we see it all over the Vatican as well. We see the same type of structure in Cambodia and some of their false god temples. There's also a connection with the symbolism of wearing the dead fish or the fish head. Here we can see Dagon, which is the Philistines' false god. Sybil, I'm not sure who that one is besides it being a false god. And then the same type of headdress being worn by one of the last popes and many popes before that, John Paul II and many others. We also have the snake hall within the Vatican. Very strange. When you're within it, it looks like you're in the head of a serpent. I mean, it's pretty much undeniable that it looks like that. Absolute. And you'd think with like the Vatican and how much money and how much time they put into architecture that they would think some of these things through, they don't just randomly do all this stuff and it just randomly comes together and they're like, oops, it kind of looks like a snake's head. They plan these things out. I mean, the amount of money that goes into these buildings is probably astronomical. So you can pretty much guarantee they had an understanding of what it looked like within that building before a single stone was laid for it. And I'll finish off this video displaying the Vatican and how it has its ties to its architectural layout to the stars, and which is really just more tying to the occult ways of Egypt and how they were obsessed with the stars and the Star of Ra and all of this. First, I want to mention that the word Vatican literally means divining serpent, and is derived from vitas, diviner, and can, serpent. So a pretty strange name. I wouldn't name my church the Divining Serpent, that's for sure, if I had the ability to. But I'll read 2 paragraphs from a blog post about the occult ties to the Vatican and how the architectural layout is tied to the stars, and really just the ancient worship of the stars and thinking that they were gods. The secret code of the Vatican was cracked by author and researcher Wayne Herschel. He was able to correlate the Vatican and Rome's temples and obelisks to the stars and reached the conclusion that they are a replica of the constellations Orion and Pleiades, the ancient stars of the gods. First of all, the Basilica, together with St. Peter's Square, Via della Concilione, and Castel Sant'Angelo, are designed to look like a key if seen from above. The key represents the famous Solomon's Key from the Key of Solomon manuscripts. Also, St. Peter's Basilica and Square represent the Orion constellation, while Castel Sant'Angelo represents the ancient star of the gods known in Egypt as the Star of Ra. And you can see these strange connections and layouts with the pictures that I'm putting on the screen, so it's pretty much undeniable really that there's very strange connections. I mean, we see the same thing in Washington, D.C. with pentagrams and all these things from the sky above. You can see these layouts. I mean, these people at the highest levels who have the control over these things and who are in secret societies and have been trying to usher in just evil and complete control since all of time, since the beginning of time. These people in their secret societies love to hide things in plain sight. And that's just how these people work. Just like Manly P. Hall, the 33rd degree Freemason, said, "Symbolism is the language of the mysteries. By symbols, men have ever sought to communicate to each other those thoughts which transcend the limitations of language." So we know at the highest levels that they are communicating through symbolism. They do these things for ritual purposes and to communicate to each other where their allegiance lies. I'm sure there's a lot of things I missed out because there's so much from the years of the Vatican and things going on there. There's so much symbolism. So if there's anything really important that stands out that I missed, please leave it in the comments below. And I'll end the video with one more Manly P. Hall quote. Again, 33rd degree Freemason. This is what these guys at the highest levels, and you know, the Freemasons built Washington, D.C., so they had a major role in the layout of that city, as well as just their connections all throughout time. The Illuminati goes from there to the Freemasons. So these people have been involved in history and the deceptions of mankind through all of human history. And he says in another quote, "When the human race learns to read the language of symbolism, a great veil will fall from the eyes of men." So there's absolutely these guys at the highest levels, they communicate with it. And he even goes out to say, when people can figure it out, you know, a great veil will fall from their eyes, because these people are communicating through signs and symbols all the time. This we know. We can see it within the Vatican and through many areas of our culture. Jesus is king. The Bible is truth. That's the most important facts. And you know, that's how a real veil will fall from people's eyes when they accept the Lord Jesus Christ. Then you can see that the world has many deceptions, and the only way to get to God is through accepting Jesus as the Son of God, the one Messiah. That's the only way. Jesus is king. Thanks for watching, and God bless.